Matric class of 2025 has achieved an 88% pass rate. It's the highest in South Africa's history. KwaZulu-Natal emerging as the top performing province with a 90.6% pass rate. More than 920,000 candidates sat for the National Senior Certificate exams last year. The Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube welcoming the 0.7 percentage point increase from 2024 and joins us now for the morning after the day before. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning, Iman.
I was giggling with Arabile because I could see you in the break there when our viewers couldn't see, just having a quick energy drink. And one can imagine, I mean, it's the end of quite an important but grueling milestone. And before we get into the results and the making of history through the numbers that you shared with us yesterday, how are you feeling about this portfolio now? What is it, just over a year in?
Look, Iman, I think, firstly, I mean, just being responsible for such a huge sector that is so people-centric, 13.5 million learners, 500,000 teachers, 25,000 schools is massive. And so I think for me, I take it as a massive privilege to be able to lead such a sector. It's obviously incredibly difficult because, of course, education matters not only just to the future of the country, but to everybody. And so, of course, so I'm feeling a lot more grounded, I think, than I was this time last year when I was delivering the matric results. I'm feeling a lot more in control about what I think needs to happen going forward in terms of the strategies that we need to employ. So it's a much better feeling, and I'm feeling a little bit more, I think, settled in the portfolio than I was last year.
And I'm glad to hear that, as you say, this is a massive portfolio to be entrusted with. And you commented as well that this is not just about individuals or about the system. It is about families and creating systemic change in the outcome intergenerationally for families. There was an interesting, in the technical briefing, an observation around the better performance of girls in the system against boys. Girls are finishing their schooling career on time, more according to schedule than their male counterparts are. And I was really, I mean, it struck something in me because we do focus, and justifiably so, a lot on the outcome and the experience of the girl child in South African society, given our history and the violence against women and children. But I'm really interested in the experience around boys. What's influencing their lack of comparative outcomes against their gender counterparts?
Look, Iman, I think I think, as you said, rightfully so, we have been focused on the girl child to try and make sure that we are seeing these equal results. But remember, part of the reason why girl children were also not making it back in schools was because of some of our the pregnancy policies that were in place. A lot of girl children who fell pregnant wouldn't come back to schools. So now that we've also refined those, we're seeing a lot of children who do fall pregnant will come back into the schooling system and essentially complete. But I am concerned, and I think I mentioned this in the speech last night, that I'm deeply concerned about the trend that we're seeing, particularly for boys between grade 10 and grade 12. And I was having an interesting conversation with an expert last night who was saying that just even in between, yes, we can look and track at the learners between DBE and DHET, but we may have a problem where we may have to even engage, portfolios such as DSD, such as the SAPs, to find out whether or not are our boys not falling into criminality, are our boys not dropping out because of drug use. And these things matter because, Iman, what we don't want is we don't want an overcorrection that then leaves the boy children behind, because that has a massive impact just on society in general. So I think we've got our work cut out for us. But I'm reminded that some work has been done in this regard. And I think as DBE, we need to revisit it and really try and figure out and find out and track where our boys are ending up. Because it may very well be that, yes, they may exit into TVET and the like, but we may also be seeing some worrying trends around, for instance, drug abuse, around engagement in crime, around simply dropouts. And I think if that is the case, then we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just recalling this anecdotally, so I'm hoping that I'm 100% accurate, and we can correct that if I'm not. The outcome for in crime trends, for example, with males, is that black males are still subject to violent crime and form part of the I mean, they're the highest numbers of those who are killed are black males in South Africa. So that picture altogether just paints a really disturbing profile of the experience of men and boys in South African society. It's a conversation we'll continue to have with you.
Especially between 18 and 28, Iman, and that is the problem that I'm experiencing and that I'm worried about, that in fact, that also may be contributing to the dropout.
So one of the other things relating to dropouts and the lack of completion across the entire school career, it was so interesting that, you know, yesterday we heard it was happening between grades, well, after grade 10, essentially, that it's happening at the penultimate stage. There's all this investment in the child up until that point, and then that's where that problem comes in. So just talk to us again about what that means for you and what it means for policymakers to ensure that we can save those last two years of that schooling career.
Yes, so I mean, one of the most interesting things that I think we saw was that we always, you know, there's always that worry from South Africans that do we have enough of a retention rate in our country? And the answer is yes. Firstly, I think the retention rate, or the throughput rate, as we put it, is sitting at between 64 and 68% generally. And that tracks with other middle income countries. And so I think just just generally, in terms of the throughput rate, I think we are on a good track. But of course, what has been concerning for me, Iman, is looking at the massive dropout rate that we're seeing, particularly between grade 10 and grade 12. Because if you look at between grade 1 and grade 10, our learners, we have a throughput rate of over 80%. So we're actually retaining learners all the way up until grade 10. Of course, we must be aware of the fact that compulsory schooling in South Africa ends in grade 9. But I think something is happening in that between grade 10 and grade 12. And a number of things are happening from our analysis. Number one, there's a lot more retention, so a lot more grade repetition. There's things like learner pregnancy. There is things like dropout because of some of this retention. And I'm also particularly concerned, and I committed to this last night, and I said, if schools are engaged in behavior of discouraging learners from taking on gateway subjects or difficult subjects because they want to gerrymander numbers for their pass rates, we will find them and we will stop this. Because if that is contributing to that high dropout rate, then we also have a problem there. So we have to really delve deep into what are some of the reasons that we're seeing a high dropout rate. But it was important for me to highlight that actually the retention rate is quite high up until grade 10. But something is happening between grade 10 and 12. And our suspicion is around subject choices, it's around retention, and it's around dropout that is focused on in those times.
There's also been progress in inclusion. I was also heartened to hear that the numbers of learners with special education needs, that's also increased. Talk to us about timelines and funding commitments to expand, projects like South African Sign Language instruction in gateway subjects at schools.
Yeah, so that's in fantastic news. And one of the things I think I was quite clear about last night is that we have to be also intentional about analyzing, for me, and I make this point repeatedly, that the matric pass rate in itself, while it's a national pride and we all have become, we get around it, but we also must be mindful that it's not the only indicator of quality in the system, and that we must be mindful that there are milestones in the system that we must look at. And one of them is inclusion. It's been heartening to see that the class of 2025 is that we've doubled almost the participation of learners living with disabilities in the system, but not just in participation, Iman, but also in essentially in achievement of bachelor passes. However, as I indicated last night, with sign language at the moment, we only have an exam paper that is in Braille that is available to our learners. And our view is that in order to increase our STEM subject participation, it's important that we have specialists who are able to teach in sign language. And that, for me, is when you reach the pinnacle of actual inclusion. Because you're not only just giving a child an exam paper, but you're also teaching them critical subjects in the language that they understand.
Let's just go to KZN to close things off. And again, there's some real challenges on the ground. You'd have seen some of the concerns expressed by trade union SATU. KZN, of course, I was chatting to the MEC yesterday, very jubilant, 90%, top of the class, countrywide, essentially. But the unions are warning of severe shortages of textbooks and stationery, other infrastructure shortcomings and resources. How are you reconciling, top provincial performance with serious readiness failures that are on the ground? How are you going to mitigate those? I think we're starting school tomorrow, but in the days to come, This is going to become very real.
Absolutely. We do start schools tomorrow, Iman. I'll come to the school readiness just shortly, but I do want to say, yes, KZN, and I congratulate KZN. And a lot of people are asking me, how do we reconcile the results of KZN based with some of the financial challenges that they've been experiencing? And I think there the credit, Iman, goes to really dedicated district directors. And I spent some time last night congratulating the district directors of KwaZulu-Natal, because if you look at the top 10 districts in South Africa, 6 of the top 10 districts come from KwaZulu-Natal, and a lot of them are rural districts. So these are people who are dedicated to those schools, who are making sure that those schools are being supported. So we really do congratulate KZN in that regard. But we have some harsh headwinds headed our way when it comes to KwaZulu-Natal, because as viewers would know, that we still have massive financial issues there. And so while the Premier did a really timely intervention last year by providing funding from provincial treasury for workbooks and some textbooks, there's still going to be some funding gaps between now and the end of the financial year. And so we will be supporting KwaZulu-Natal. I have been in constant communication with all 9 provinces to gauge their state of readiness for tomorrow. Because for me, while the celebration was last night, it is absolutely critical that tomorrow we start on the first day and the first lesson of school, and that there are textbooks that are ready, school nutrition that is ready, and scholar transport that is ready. That's how you make sure that the year starts off on a good note.
Well, we're going to get you back for this. We'll leave it there for now. But definitely throughout the course of the week and next week, Minister, we'd love to have you back to talk about ensuring that those resources are available at the point of need on time. Appreciate your time, though, and I hope you get the opportunity to rest today. It's been quite a calendar. Siviwe Gwarube is the Education Minister here in the country.